more than 20% drop has been reported due to COVID impacts. We also have seen that there has been a substantial disruption in the supply lines, semiconductors being one of the most recent example, and of course job losses have occurred. Recent industry estimates show that over 100,000 jobs have been lost, and these are significant numbers. However, COVID has not only highlighted the need to address the impact of this crisis, but also the trend to go towards climate neutrality is accelerating. In 2020, we have seen more than 1 million electric chargeable vehicles being sold in Europe. And by the fourth quarter of 2020, nearly 1 in 6 passenger cars registered in EU was already electrically chargeable vehicle. So the trend is indeed accelerating. And this is an important trend. Transport emissions need to decrease by 90% by 2050. Let's not forget that the road transport segment is responsible for a fifth of total EU greenhouse gas emissions. And the recovery of the automotive sector from the pandemic offers the opportunity for a green transformation, where the innovative zero-emission technologies, as well as the development of infrastructure, will be key. As Minister Drexler has mentioned, CO2 standards play an important role. They have been a driver for innovation already. The stricter targets applying since 2020 have triggered a surge in the uptake of battery, electric and plug-in hybrids across Europe. And as part of the Fit for 55 package, the Commission will propose to revise the CO2 emission standards for cars and vans in order to ensure a clear pathway towards zero-emission mobility. However, successful decarbonization of our industry will require that Commission, Member States, regions and industry create really a more concrete, we call it a pathway, a concrete agreed way forward that would help this shift towards greener, more circular production modes. In the last years, the Commission has proposed a number of measures to support our economy to meet the challenges of the transition, and especially in the strategic sectors such as automotive. I would like to particularly highlight the industrial alliances as one way of tackling the challenges ahead of us. This is certainly a very useful way, a useful tool to accelerate the activities and to attract private investors as well as focus the public sector investments. A very good example in this regard is the Battery Alliance, which was launched in 2017. The European battery ecosystem is economically strategic, as you well know. It is at the heart of our ambition for zero-emission mobility and energy storage. And thanks to very strong cooperation between the Commission, Member States and industry, we have really made substantial progress over the last 2 or 3 years. An important element also in generating a new momentum has been the so-called IPCEIs, or these important projects of common European interest, where we have now also projects on batteries. And there are 2 projects, 2 IPCEIs. They involve enterprises from 12 member states, which is a good achievement, represent something like 20 billion of private and public investments. And thanks to these initiatives, these IPCEIs, Europe has managed to attract in the magnitude of 60 billion euros of investments. So it's really substantial, and we see these large new factories being built in several parts of Europe. So this is success, but it also highlighted a shortcoming, a bottleneck for further growth, and this in the area of access to raw material. Our industry depends on a number of raw materials that are mostly imported from third countries. We import 100% of refined lithium for electric cars, platinum to produce clean hydrogen, silicon metal for solar panels. 98% of the rare earth elements which we need come from a single supplier from China. So this is not sustainable, and Europe needs to diversify its supply chains while investing also in circular technologies so that we could reuse resources instead of constantly only extracting them. So with this in mind, last year the Commission launched the European Alliance on Raw Materials to mobilize industrial and innovation actors, member states again, regions of course, but also the European Investment Bank, investors from private sector, civil society, and to really bring it together in such a way that we address the whole entire value chain. Similarly, on hydrogen, we have a European Clean Hydrogen Alliance, which was also launched last year. And hydrogen, as you well know, potentially has a key role in decarbonization of heavy-duty vehicles. And currently, we are in the process of considering more than 1,000 proposals that we have received in the field of hydrogen particularly. And we are building on hydrogen, we are building on these success stories in batteries. And in similar vein, we have now in the new industry strategy update proposed an alliance for processors and semiconductors, which, as you know, is also a critical area. So while these alliances provide a powerful framework for collective action, we also see that, of course, funding is essential. The Recovery and Resilience Facility will make more than 670 billion euros of loans and grants available to the investments and reforms in the member states. And as you know, we are just in the process of getting the first national recovery and resilience plans in. We are assessing what's in there, but we can already see that in a number of member states, a good attention is also put on the needs of automotive sector and the whole value chain that comes with it. And there are, of course, also other sources, especially from the cohesion policy, which are essential for this transition. Among the objectives of the European Regional Development Fund and the Just Transition Fund are also issues such as reskilling and upskilling of workers, offering help with economic diversification and industrial modernization. They also supporting technological research and helping conversion of post-industrial sites. And all of these are directly supporting transition of automotive sectors in our regions. Decarbonization will only be possible if there are sufficient recharging and refueling infrastructure in place across the whole EU. And with this in mind, Commission will adopt a proposal for the revision of the directive on the deployment of alternative fuels infrastructure. This will be part of the Fit for 55 package, which will then address the situation with the charging stations and necessary infrastructure. The proposal will be accompanied by a strategic rollout plan to further support the accelerated deployment of the infrastructure. We also need major and sustained investment to support the re- and upskilling, as I already mentioned, of the workers in new technologies, manufacturing practices. And with this in mind, we are working very closely with the other department, DG Employment, on the Pact for Skills, which is looking also and zooming in the needs of automotive skills alliance, which was then announced last year in November. And then we see that a need for regional dedicated pilot training schemes is something that we should be putting forward. And finally, a point perhaps on green steel as well, which is an element for car industry. we see a wider decarbonization agenda. We see a wider decarbonization agenda actually also looking into the steel sector. And we see that, of course, automotive industry is one of the major consumer of green steel. If you haven't yet looked, I suggest to take a look at our industry policy update, which was announced on 5th of May. And among the papers that we published, there is also an analysis on steel industry and what it takes for the steel industry to be going towards zero emissions and decarbonization.